In the heart of a small Alabama town, a family's peaceful life was hiding a chilling secret. Picture a cozy, unassuming home tucked away at the end of a dusty road, framed by old oak trees. This is where Susan Wallace spent her evenings, enjoying the simple pleasure of iced tea on her porch while her kids played nearby. Susan, 30 years old, dedicated her life to her family. She found joy in life's daily routines, baking for church fundraisers, sewing clothes for her children, and keeping a pristine house. She embodied the role of a caring homemaker, always putting others before herself. Mark Wallace, her husband, was the family's steady provider. At 35, he was a respected mechanic known for his dependability. To everyone in town, he was a quiet man, deeply committed to his family. But Mark's past was more troubled than most knew, filled with secrets even Susan couldn't imagine. This seemingly perfect family was actually on the brink of a scandal. As we peel back the layers of their lives, we uncover the hidden truths and lies that threaten to tear them apart. Join us as we dive deeper into the twists and turns of the Wallace family saga, revealing the reality behind their idyllic facade. As we explore the Wallace family's seemingly tranquil life, a startling revelation comes to light, exposing the cracks beneath the surface. The calm facade of family dinners and shared laughter masked a disturbing truth involving Mark, the family's dependable patriarch. Unknown to Susan, Mark's past involved a deeply troubling relationship that no one, not even his closest friends, could have guessed. Years ago, Mark had a secret that started in his teenage days, a hidden connection with Leela, his half-sister, born from an affair his father had. This part of his life was kept under wraps, and the siblings met in secret, sharing a bond that dangerously blurred the lines of family ties. As they grew older, this connection deepened into something more, something forbidden. This secret stayed with Mark into adulthood, hidden even as he built his life with Susan. It was a chapter of his past he thought closed, but it was about to resurface with unexpected consequences. The stability of the Wallace household, upheld by Susan's unwavering dedication and Mark's silent strength, faced its ultimate test as shadows from Mark's past life began to creep into the present. Stay tuned as the story unfolds, revealing how a letter from Leela rekindles old flames and sets off a chain of events that challenges the very essence of family and trust. The secret that Mark thought was buried forever came crashing into the present when an unexpected letter arrived one autumn afternoon. It was from Leela, filled with words of longing and regret. She sought closure, a way to move past their complicated history. Despite his reservations, Mark agreed to meet her, unable to ignore the unresolved ties of their shared past. At a quiet diner on the outskirts of town, Mark was confronted not with the rebellious teenager he once knew, but a mature, confident woman. Leela spoke of her life's struggles and her unfulfilled desires, painting a picture of a woman still searching for her place in the world. The meeting, meant to bring closure, instead reignited their illicit affair with a force that neither could resist. This secret rendezvous marked the beginning of a renewed but dangerous liaison that threatened to destroy everything Mark had built with Susan. Over the ensuing months, their affair grew more reckless and consuming. As Mark and Leela met in secret, their passion was matched only by the guilt and turmoil it brought upon Mark, who found himself caught between his duties as a husband and father and the grip of a past he could not escape. As we continue, witness how this affair spirals out of control, leading Susan to uncover the devastating truth and pushing the Wallace family towards a brink from which there is no return. Stay with us as the impact of Mark's choices unfolds, challenging the foundations of marriage and family loyalty. The unraveling began subtly. Susan, ever attentive and caring, started noticing small changes in Mark's behavior. He was coming home late, citing extra work hours, and their conversations, once lively and intimate, became scarce and tense. A growing distance emerged between them, one that Susan couldn't quite understand. Her suspicions grew when she discovered a motel receipt in Mark's pocket, one that couldn't be explained by his usual work routine. Driven by a mix of doubt and determination, Susan began to quietly gather more clues. Her heart sank as she pieced together evidence of Mark's betrayal. One evening, her worst fears were confirmed when she found a series of incriminating messages on Mark's phone from Leela, filled with intimate details and plans for their next meeting. Confronted with this undeniable proof, Susan felt her world shatter. The man she had loved and trusted had woven a web of lies that now entrapped them both. The pain of betrayal was sharp and immediate, but Susan knew she needed answers. She needed to confront Mark, to hear the truth from him directly. Join us in the next segment as we witness the explosive confrontation between Susan and Mark, a moment that reveals the full extent of the deception and sets the stage for the dramatic events that follow. The tension in the Wallace home reached a boiling point on a stormy March evening. After putting the children to bed, Susan, with a heart heavy with dread and betrayal, placed Mark's phone on the kitchen table, the messages from Leela clearly displayed. The air was thick with anticipation and sorrow as she awaited Mark's return. When Mark walked in, the sight of his phone displayed so accusingly, and Susan's solemn demeanor struck him with panic. He attempted to deflect, claiming Leela was just an old family friend reaching out. But as Susan pressed on, her voice steady but filled with hurt, Mark's defenses crumbled. He confessed to the affair, but omitted the most horrifying part of his secret. It wasn't until Susan, fueled by a mix of anger and desperation, demanded to know the full extent of his deception that Mark revealed the staggering truth. Leela was not just his lover, she was his half-sister. The revelation sent Susan reeling, her sense of reality shattered by the enormity of the betrayal. The foundation of their marriage, built on trust and shared values, was now irreparably broken. In the next part of our story, we explore the immediate aftermath of this confession, the emotional fallout, and Susan's decision to bring this dark secret into the light, risking everything to expose the truth. Stay with us as the drama continues to unfold, pushing the Wallace family into uncharted and turbulent waters. In the wake of Mark's devastating confession, Susan grappled with a range of emotions, from disbelief and shock to anger and betrayal. Determined to confront the issue head-on, she decided that the only way forward was to bring the truth to light for all involved. Susan organized a family meeting, extending invitations not only to both their parents, but also to Leela herself, insisting that they face the issue as a unified group. The atmosphere was charged with tension as the family gathered in the Wallace living room. The air felt heavy, laden with unspoken accusations and fears. Susan, maintaining a composed exterior, began to recount the discovery of the affair and the unbearable truth of Mark and Leela's relationship. Each word hung in the air, a painful echo in the quiet room. Mark sat silently, the weight of his actions evident in his downcast eyes, while Leela displayed a defiant smirk, seemingly unashamed of the chaos she had helped create. The reactions from their parents were visceral. Mark's mother, overwhelmed by a mix of shame and grief, wept openly, while his father sat frozen, a portrait of regret and disbelief. This family meeting, intended as a step towards resolution, quickly devolved into a chaotic clash of emotions and accusations. Voices raised and tempers flared as the family confronted the tangled web of lies and deceit. In our next update, we'll delve into the fallout from this explosive revelation and the impact it has on each family member's life. Follow the story as it unfolds, revealing the deep scars left by secrets and the difficult road toward healing and accountability. The aftermath of the family meeting left deep emotional scars on everyone involved. In the days that followed, the Wallace household was enveloped in a cold silence, broken only by the occasional whisper of strained conversations. Susan, feeling betrayed not just by Mark, but by the life they had built together, found herself at a crossroads. The trust that had once been the cornerstone of their marriage was now in ruins. As Susan wrestled with her emotions, the community around them began to sense the tension. Rumors started to circulate, adding public scrutiny to the family's private turmoil. Susan, bolstered by her resolve to protect her children and her own dignity, knew she had to make a decision. The notion of forgiveness seemed distant, overshadowed by the need for action and clarity. Mark, on the other hand, was consumed by guilt. His past actions had not only jeopardized his marriage, but had fractured his entire family. He made several desperate attempts to reconcile with Susan, pledging to cut all ties with Leela and to recommit to their family. But the shadows of his choices loomed too large, casting doubt on every promise he made. In our next piece, we will explore the escalating tensions as Leela refuses to step back, intensifying her efforts to reach Mark. This relentless pursuit pushes the family dynamics to a breaking point, forcing each member to decide where they stand. Join us as the story continues to unravel, showcasing the challenges of navigating through a web of lies and the quest for redemption. As the weeks progressed, Leela's behavior grew increasingly erratic and obsessive. Despite Mark's promises to Susan and his attempts to end all contact, Leela was not deterred. She began to cross boundaries that alarmed even those who once sympathized with her. Her calls and messages to Mark became more frequent and intense, and when he blocked her number, she found other ways to insert herself into his life. The situation escalated further when Leela started showing up unannounced at places she knew Mark would be. Her presence was unsettling, not just to Mark and Susan, but to everyone around them. The community, already buzzing with gossip about the Wallace family's troubles, watched with a mix of curiosity and concern as Leela's obsession became more public. Susan, increasingly fearful for her family's safety and her own mental well-being, found herself constantly on edge. The stress of living under such scrutiny and threat took a heavy toll on her. She began to contemplate more drastic measures to protect herself and her children, including legal action against Leela. In the next installment, we will see how Susan's growing fears and Leela's relentless pursuit culminate in a tragic confrontation. This turning point forces all involved to confront the harsh realities of their choices and the impact those choices have had on their lives. Join us as this gripping tale of family, betrayal, and tragedy continues to unfold. The tension reached a critical point when Susan discovered chilling evidence of Leela's increasing desperation. One morning, she found disturbing messages on her own phone, Leela's veiled threats, mixed with pleas directed at Mark. These communications were not just unsettling, they were outright menacing. Susan realized that the situation had spiraled far beyond a mere marital dispute and was now a serious safety concern. Leela's refusal to accept the end of her relationship with Mark led her to take more aggressive actions. She began to appear near the Wallace home at odd hours, sometimes just watching from a distance, other times approaching the doorstep, each visit marking an escalation in her behavior. Neighbors took notice, and whispers turned into outright concern for the Wallace family's safety. Faced with this growing threat, Susan felt compelled to act decisively to safeguard her family. The fear for her own safety and that of her children became paramount, pushing her towards considering a restraining order. She reached out to legal counsel, seeking advice on how to best handle the harassment and protect her family from further harm. In our next update, we delve into the fateful events that follow Susan's decision to seek legal protection. The narrative takes a darker turn as the conflict between Susan, Mark, and Leela reaches a boiling point, leading to unforeseen consequences that alter the course of their lives forever. Stay with us as the drama unfolds, bringing new challenges and irreversible decisions. Amidst the growing storm, the situation took a harrowing turn on a seemingly ordinary day that quickly spiraled into chaos. Early one morning, the tranquility of the neighborhood was shattered when Susan did not arrive to pick up her youngest child from school, a break from routine that alarmed those close to her. Concerned, a neighbor decided to check on the Wallace home, only to discover the front door ajar and no response from inside. As the hours ticked by with no sign of Susan, the community's anxiety turned to fear. By the time the authorities were called, a sense of dread had settled over the town. Police arrived to find a scene that confirmed their worst fears. Susan had been attacked in her own home. The living room was a disarray of overturned furniture and broken glass, with Susan's body found amidst the chaos, a tragic end to a life once filled with warmth and care. The evidence at the scene suggested a crime driven by deep personal animosity, not a random act of violence. Susan's phone, left on the kitchen counter, held missed calls from an unknown number, adding another layer of mystery and urgency to the investigation. As the news of the tragedy spread, the community reeled in shock. The Wallace family, once a symbol of happiness and unity, had become the epicenter of a horrifying crime. In our next segment, we'll explore the intense police investigation that followed, piecing together the events leading to Susan's untimely death and focusing on the hunt for her assailant. Join us as the case unfolds, revealing a web of deceit and obsession that led to this tragic moment. As the investigation into Susan Wallace's murder deepened, the focus swiftly shifted toward her husband Mark and his half-sister, Leela. Mark was initially questioned as a matter of routine, his alibi for the morning of the murder corroborated by his co-workers. However, the nature of his and Leela's relationship, coupled with recent events, cast a long shadow of suspicion over them both. Leela became a person of interest, as neighbors reported seeing her car near the Wallace residence on several occasions leading up to the day of the murder. Her known animosity towards Susan, combined with her unsettling behavior, painted a troubling picture. The detectives secured a warrant to search Leela's apartment, where they discovered a notebook filled with obsessive writings about Mark and their twisted relationship dynamics, further implicating her in the crime. With Leela's sudden disappearance immediately after Susan's murder, the manhunt intensified. Law enforcement officers traced her last known movements to the outskirts of town, finding her abandoned vehicle but no sign of Leela herself. The search expanded, turning into a nationwide effort to locate her, drawing media attention and public speculation about the motives and whereabouts of a woman seemingly driven by forbidden love and jealousy. In our next update, we will delve into the dramatic turn of events when Leela is finally apprehended, exploring the culmination of a frantic search and the beginning of her journey through the legal system. Stay tuned as this gripping saga approaches its climax, revealing the fate of a woman whose actions have captivated and horrified the community. The breakthrough in the nationwide manhunt for Leela came unexpectedly when a vigilant Border Patrol agent at the Canadian border spotted a nervous woman attempting to cross. Her altered appearance, hair dyed brown and significantly thinner, initially threw off authorities, but her anxious demeanor raised suspicions. Upon further scrutiny, her identification failed to pass muster, leading to a failed attempt to flee. Leela was quickly apprehended after a brief chase. In her possession, law enforcement found not only a large sum of cash, but also a forged passport and a journal. The entries in the journal were disturbing, filled with delusions of reuniting with Mark and removing Susan as an obstacle. This evidence was damning, solidifying her role in the tragic events that had unfolded. Upon her return to Alabama, Leela faced charges of first-degree murder. The community, still reeling from the shock of Susan's death and the subsequent drama, watched closely as the case moved to trial. Leela's actions had not only destroyed a family, but had also gripped an entire town with fear. In the next part of our story, we'll cover the trial proceedings, a focal point of national attention where the depths of Leela's obsession and the consequences of her actions are laid bare. Join us as we witness the legal reckoning of a crime that rocked a small town to its core. The trial of Leela Carter was a spectacle that captured the nation's attention, held in the Jefferson County Courthouse. The prosecution presented a compelling case against Leela, portraying her as a manipulative and dangerous individual whose obsession with Mark had catastrophic consequences. The evidence was overwhelming. The incriminating text messages to Susan, the obsessive journal entries, and forensic data tying her to the crime scene. Assistant District Attorney Carolyn Weaver led the prosecution with a meticulous and methodical approach. She argued that Leela's actions were premeditated, driven by jealousy and a refusal to let Mark go, even at the expense of another person's life. The courtroom was packed daily, the public and media absorbed by the dramatic testimonies and the stark presentation of Leela's transgressions. On the other side, Leela's defense attorney, Paul Grayson, painted a picture of a woman pushed to the brink by a complex mix of emotional instability and the unique pressures of her upbringing. He suggested that Leela's mental state at the time of the crime was fractured by the tumultuous relationship with her half-brother and the rejection she felt from both Mark and the wider community. As the trial unfolded, the tension in the courtroom was palpable, with every statement and piece of evidence scrutinized for its potential impact on the jury's perception. The emotional climax came when Mark took the stand, his testimony a blend of confession and regret. He detailed the secretive nature of their relationship and his failure to foresee the tragic spiral of events his reconnection with Leela would cause. In our next segment, we will explore the jury's decision and the aftermath of the trial, detailing how this case's resolution affected the Wallace family and the community that had been shaken by these events. Stay tuned as we conclude this harrowing tale of forbidden love and irrevocable consequences. The jury's deliberations were tense and fraught with the heavy responsibility of their decision. After 2 weeks of testimony and 2 days of intense discussion, they reached a verdict. Leela Carter was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom, filled with anticipation, let out a collective breath as the verdict was read. Relief mixed with profound sadness rippled through the observers, including Susan's family, who had been present throughout the trial. The sentencing phase was swift, with the judge delivering a harsh condemnation of Leela's actions. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a decision that underscored the gravity of her crimes. As the sentence was pronounced, Leela remained stoic, her demeanor cold and unyielding, even in the face of lifelong imprisonment. In the aftermath, the Wallace family and their community began the slow process of healing. Mark, deeply changed by the ordeal, sold the family home and moved away with his children, seeking a fresh start and a way to escape the shadows of the past. He dedicated himself to raising his children with a renewed focus on honesty and integrity, hoping to salvage a future from the wreckage of their shared history. Susan's memory was honored by her parents through the establishment of a scholarship fund aimed at helping women who have suffered from betrayal and hardship. The community rallied around this cause, choosing to remember Susan for her kindness and strength, rather than the tragedy that marked her final days. As we close this chapter on a story that has captivated and saddened many, it serves as a poignant reminder of the complex human emotions that can drive individuals to the brink and the lasting impact of actions that can never be undone. Join us next time as we explore another compelling narrative from the files of true crime. With the trial concluded and Leela Carter beginning her life sentence, the community tried to find closure from the events that had so deeply shaken their sense of security and trust. The Wallace family, now fragmented and forever altered, faced the future with a mix of resilience and inevitable sorrow. Mark, having moved to a new town with his children, focused on their well-being, striving to provide a stable and nurturing environment away from the shadows of their past. He became more involved in community activities and often spoke at events about the importance of family values and the consequences of hidden truths. The scholarship established in Susan's name grew into a significant support network, helping many women to rebuild their lives after experiencing personal tragedies. It stood as a lasting legacy to her spirit of kindness and community support, reflecting her life's values rather than the circumstances of her death. As the years passed, the case occasionally resurfaced in media retrospectives, often cited as a stark example of how deeply personal relationships can impact the broader community. These reflections brought new insights into the nature of forgiveness, the process of healing, and the ways in which a community can come together to support those in need. In our final segment, we reflect on the lessons learned from this tragedy and the changes implemented in community support systems to help prevent such profound crises in the future. Join us as we conclude this exploration into the depths of human nature and the power of community resilience.